The viral seed snail roll. Is it a fad? How does it work? And paper versus plastic. I've been doing this method for 8 weeks now, and let me show you what I've learned. If you're not familiar with the seed snail roll, I will link it up here, and if I can't get that to work, I'll put it in the description, but go check that out and it'll catch you up on what I'm talking about. But I was scrolling Instagram one night just before bed, and I saw the seed snail roll for the first time, and I thought it was amazing. So I went to bed and I just couldn't stop thinking about it. So I got up right then and had to go try it out. And that's when I decided I had to make a video on it. Well, I'm 8 weeks in and I've been experimenting, and I'm sure, like I've had and different friends that I talked to had a lot of questions about what if. And also, a lot of people recommended that we just do the paper. And I did do paper and I did do plastic, and I saw some major differences in them. So I'm going to go through everything and show you what I've learned.
As you can see here, I tried a wide variety of different materials.
So when sowing seeds directly into the roll, um, I had some things do really well and I had some things that did not. One of the conclusions that I myself thought might be an issue would be maybe like the cabbages with that were more like a shallow rooted variety of plant. I thought that they might not do as well in the rolls as, say, like a tomato that likes to put on nice deep roots. Well, that wasn't the case. I don't have any cabbages to show you because I've already planted them out, but they did really well. I was surprised at that. Now, one of the things I noticed with the basil, it seemed to be slow getting started. However, none of the basil was in any plastic. That's something I did find with the paper versus plastic, is that the paper was harder to keep the moisture consistent. They dried out faster versus the plastic. So I think the success rate in the plastic was that it could stay, when it came to the seeds, is that it could stay moister. Um, Now, these I have already potted up. They were seemed to be a little slow. I didn't have them in paper. I had them in this other thing that I'll show you here.
This is some basil that I direct sewed into this floral paper. It's a foil that's coated with like a cellophane or plastic. And it really didn't work that great. I decided to go ahead and up pot all of these out of the different materials that I had it in into the plastic. And I did mix varieties here, but I'll be able to tell them apart when they get their leaves on them. But they're all a variety of basil. And you can see I used my handy dandy spatula. But this is going to save a whole lot more space than if I would have taken this basil out and potted it into individual cells. Even if I'd done it into small little pots, it would have really taken up a lot more room than, say, this one little seed roll is. Easy breezy. They look great. Now I wanted to show you the basil that was in the paper roll. Now the root system got really, really good. It's a nice root system. However, with the paper ones, I noticed that the roots did stick to the paper, but really it didn't hurt anything. But it did not do that with the plastic, so some of the roots did stick with the paper. Now, I am adding more soil on top. One of the things I noticed from the beginning of the seed rolls is I was not adding a thick enough soil into my rolls. But that really was not that big a deal because it's super easy to up pot, as I'll show you here in a little bit. But all those little basil plants fit right here in this one container. And they're easy to pick up and handle, and I'll show you how I water them. It's easy to water. You can also just completely bottom water, but that's just within a week or so, and they have already grown out real nice.
But since I've potted them up from that type of product into this plastic, they've done much better. And you can see these are as well.
Here is the first seed roll that I was not having enough soil in, and here is a paper one that you can see did not germinate well because it was dry. Hard to regulate that moisture. And here I'm going to try to do some squash seeds. I've made the soil thicker. I'm going to sow the seeds pretty heavily and thin them out because squash does not like to have its roots disturbed. So we're going to see how this does. But you can see here it's super easy to sow the seeds.
Now, this was some snapdragons, and they took their sweet time germinating, and as you can see, there was very few germinated in comparison to what I sowed. However, these were home saved seeds that I don't know how good they were anyway. So, but they did pretty good. Most of what I did because of the timing of when I discovered the seed roll is I was up potting most of my seedlings that I'd already started. Instead of using like traditional pots, I up potted into the roll, and they did really nice. And I do have some comparisons here that I want to show you of the same type of plant, peppers for instance, I had in some paper rolls and I had some in the plastic rolls. And I want to show you here the difference in their progress.
Now these are all pepper varieties, but they are different varieties of peppers, and they were all potted up, transplanted into the seed rolls at the same time, and you can see there was quite a difference.
One of the first things that I put in a seed roll were the onions, and I did not direct sow the onions. I up potted them, and some were in paper and some were in plastic. And what I noticed is, okay, let's take a look at some of these onions, and these have been in here the longest.
Now you can tell that the paper just did not hold up for a long period of time, and I ended up throwing these away, these poor pitiful little things. Now this is the same variety of onion for the same amount of time in the plastic, and you can see they held up much better. Now here's a different variety in the plastic, and they look great. And one of the things I noticed with some of the paper was that it got, I don't know if that's a mildew or if it's glue or some sort of material from the paper, but it would get this white milky looking stuff on it. As you can see, these look gorgeous. They're easy to handle. The plants look healthy. And how is it a time saver and a space saver? If I had this many tomato plants in individual pots, it would end up being about 4 or 5 trays that I have to carry out and carry back in. When you do what's called hardening off, it's where you take the plants in and out so they can get acclimated to the outside conditions. So it's a huge time saver. As opposed to the seed rolls.
Now for the two big questions. Is it a fad? I personally do not think it's a fad. I like it. I will continue to try it, and I'll continue to share with you what I learned. Now to answer the question, paper versus plastic. Now, all of the material that I used was recycled material, paper and plastic, so that's a win-win. That means it was free, and I am 100% aware of all the ramifications of using plastic. I do take every precaution in most aspects of my life where I can. So in the words of Forrest Gump, that's all I have to say about that. On that note, for me, I found that the plastic performed better than the paper. Now the paper was still a viable option. However, you need to take into consideration that it was harder to keep moist. it dried out. Therefore, it was inconsistent, and I think that caused the seeds not to germinate as well as in the plastic. And I also did see smaller development or slower development of the seedlings of the ones that I potted up. So if you feel like that's something that you could regulate or that's a sacrifice you need to make, then by all means you use paper. But for me, I'm going to stick with the plastic. I'm having good results with it, and my main goal is to produce some food for my family. So plastic for the win for me.
Thank y'all for hanging out with me, and let's keep trying to find simpler ways to garden. My name's Loanna, and this is Little Bit of Homestead.